the previous video lesson, we looked at how to handle the holding of cards, toggle those holds on and off, and draw our second round of cards. We're going to continue that discussion of phase 3 by handling the betting and adjusting the balance. Next, I'm going to add a method for place bet. And that's going to be a user-defined method. So I'll put it down here at the end of my user-defined methods. Let's start with a P. So private void place bet, and I'm going to have an integer of my bet. If we're going to check to see what the balance is. If the balance is equal to 0, then we're going to call a method of Renu account. We'll have to write that method. Else if balance is greater than or equal to my bet, so we have enough money to cover the bet, then bet will equal my bet. And else we don't have enough money to cover the bet. Let's bring up a message box dot show. We'll say something to the effect of you don't have enough in your account to cover that bet. And our title will be low balance. And our bet at that point then should become 0. Let's set txtbet.text, when that's all done with, to equal bet.toString. Remember, bet was a class level variable. So we also need to create our Renu account method. And before I do that, I notice this should be a label, LVL bet.text. That was a bet. That was a label and not a text box. So private void, and this one is going to be Renu account. Not going to pass anything, so just empty parentheses. We're going to create a dialog result variable, just called, let's call it dr. So dr then equals, I'm going to show a message box, and our message will say, oh my, it looks like you are broke. Would you like to borrow another $100? And then my title is going to be, do you have a gambling problem? And here we want to use some buttons. And our buttons are going to be yes or no. So message box buttons dot yes, no. I'm just going to carry that on down to the next line and do our semicolon. Okay, so if dr equals dialog result dot yes, so they do want to borrow. And I want 2 equal signs there, so it's equal to. We're going to set balance to 100. we're going to set bet equal to 0, so it should already be 0. Payout equals 0. So we're going to just kind of reset the board, so our hide show label buttons should be false. And then our hide show hold labels should also be false. They're probably already false because we've drawn that second hand before we get here, but it's not a bad idea just to make sure that those are not being seen. Our txt balance.text equals balance.toString. And that should have been a label, LBL balance with a capital B. There we go. Next is LBL bet dot text equals bet dot toString. And then our LBL payout dot text equals payout dot toString. So I then want to set the backs of those 5 cards to 0. So I'm just going to say display card. I'm going to pass it 1. And I want to give it a 0. And I'm just going to copy that, paste, and set these to 2, 3, 4, and 5. I want to come back up to the BT and draw button, and we want to make sure they have enough to cover their bet before we draw. And so before we draw, we're going to say if bet is equal to 0, so they haven't made a bet, we'll simply do a message box.show that says you must first place a bet. And our title will be place a bet. And then we call return statement, which isn't going to return anything, so it's just a blank return statement, but that will end this, so it never draws the initial hand. So we'll put a comment here of exit the method. And I also want to do an if bet is greater than balance. We're basically the same thing. We're going to change our message, so I'm just going to copy those 2 lines of code. And we'll say you can't cover that bet. So I'm going to go back up to my BT and bet buttons. I'm going to change this code a little bit. We had bet 1 and showing that bet in the text of our label. We created that place bet. So let's just say place bet 1. That was our method. And we'll do the same thing on the other bet buttons. Except here we're betting a 2. Betting a 3, betting a 4, and betting a 5. And on the form load, we're going to set LBL balance dot text equal to dot toString, and we'll set LBL bet dot text equal to bet dot toString. And LBL payout dot text equal to payout dot toString. Now those should already come up, but that should already come up as 0, and the balance should come up as 100. We put that into our interface, but it's always nice to make sure those things are happening. In the bet, I think we put 5 there. We want it to come up as a 0, which is the initial bet. So I have one error here in line 246. I'm going to go back and look at that. And I have a space between my less than and equals. Doesn't like that. Okay. Again, we're going to the File menu and choose Save All. And let's test our project. So I do want to initially set the balance to 100 rather than 0. Let's go back and change that. At the very top, we're going to set balance to 100. And actually, we'll set the bet initially to 5 rather than 0. Okay, so I get 100 for balance, bet is 5. I'm going to click Draw. Well, let's try to go for the straight. Hey, I got a straight. In the next phase, we're going to look at how to see if we got a winning hand or not. And so in that phase, or after that phase, this will say you drew a straight, and will tell us what the payout is for that straight based on these tables here and what their bet level was. Let's play again. Doing pretty well. I've got a pair of aces this time. That's all I got, but that does pay out. Nothing there. Let's try to go for the flush. Almost. Pair of threes doesn't get us anything. Here I'm going to go for the 5, see if I can draw another one or maybe 2 of them. Nope. Again, we'll go for the flush. Close. Nothing there. Nothing there. And nothing there. Okay, so anyway, it does seem to be working correctly in terms of drawing our cards, letting us hold cards. Now what we're not doing yet is managing the bet. So every time we draw, we probably want to deduct the bet from the balance. So let's do that as our one last thing here, and we'll test that. So on our initial complete, when we draw the initial hand, right before that, let's set balance minus equals bet. So we're going to decrement balance by the bet. And we want to show LBL balance dot text equals balance dot toString. Okay, I'm going to test again. I'm going to draw. We've gone down to $95 with our $5 bet. Draw again. Didn't really get anything that time. We're going to play again. And we're down to $90. Now we're down to $85. So our balance is going down as we bet. We're not winning anything yet, so it's never going up, and that'll be in the next phase. If you just jumped into this video, you can see all the videos from the C# Xamarin Programming Cohort playlist by clicking on the image in the lower right. And if you'd like to be alerted to future videos that I create, you can click my picture up in the top right and subscribe to the channel.